Hi there, everyone. Welcome to another installment episode of Candidate Attorney Diaries. We're on every Saturday at 3 o'clock. So, whether you're catching this on the live or on the replay, welcome. Today, I'm going to be joined by another brave CA who wants to share his ongoing and current experience. So, you're going to be hearing tales from the front, and I think it really helps. All of these episodes help to build a community of candidate attorneys, those who are thinking of becoming candidate attorneys, um, for you to find some kind of rapport, knowing that someone else has gone through it, made mistakes just like you. Because the biggest trick or one of the negative things that, as much as I love the brain, but I feel like it plays this trick on us to make us think that we are alone in whatever we're going through. So these episodes are meant to not just allow for these people to be voices on your behalf, but for you to find a community and, of course, to find the bravery or find the courage within yourself to come on and speak about your experiences. So we are not here to demonize anybody, any firm. We just want you to not feel alone and to know that there are others that are going through the same struggle with you, right? So today I'm going to be joined by Antonie Ackerman. We've had a chat before and he has lots to share. We could have gone on with our introductory call and maybe recorded that, but I'm sure we'll hear that and then some on today's call. So I'm just waiting for him to join live and then we'll kick it off. So guys, if you want to be part of these episodes, they are uploaded to my YouTube channel in a playlist called Candidate Attorney Diaries. And so they're there for you to watch on demand, to watch when you're feeling down. You need to hear somebody else's story to make yourself feel better. If you want to come on, then please feel free to either DM me here on Instagram or you can send me a message on LinkedIn, and then I will set up a sort of a pre-meet introductory call, and I'll get to hear your story, and then of course get to schedule you for one of the Saturdays, right? So you can be on sharing your story, and of course, once I upload it to YouTube, it's on the internet forever, right? So just think of your story as being a resource for someone. Okay, so that's something that I emphasize with those that participate is the power of storytelling. Because if you had to teach lessons in resilience and being brave and perseverance, if you taught them as cold hard facts, then they don't hit as they don't hit home as hard as if somebody shares their own story, because stories come with emotions, they come with locations, they come with pictures in your mind that will start to form. You might start making associations unconsciously or subconsciously with stuff that you're going through. So it just holds a lot of water. It makes a greater impact if a difficulty or a difficult journey is shared through a story. So, if anything, I want you to believe in the power of your story. Remember, your story is different to everyone else's story because you navigate the world and you're navigating practical vocational training or articles in your own way. Okay, because we all come from different backgrounds, we have different hang-ups, traumas, our relationship to authority might be warped a little it, and so we don't do well with somebody giving us instructions or shouting at us. Right? So all of us come with a package that allows us to navigate the world in a unique way. So this whole experience of PBT articles is something that you are navigating uniquely, and there is a power in telling your story. Okay, so I encourage you to come on. As I said, we're not here to demonize anybody or speak badly about any particular firm. We're just here to share experiences. We're here to create a community. And like I said, this is for posterity. So we're creating a playlist that you can go back and listen to if you need the encouragement at some point in the future. Okay, so I do encourage you to come on. And I mean, if you also can share your story via LinkedIn, via posting about it, just talking about what you went through, the lessons. Right? I always appreciate content like that, where people share their comments or share their experiences as candidate attorneys, because it just makes a lot more sense from people that are going through it at the moment, right? It makes a lot more sense to hear from people that are currently in it, as opposed to somebody like me who may have good intentions for sharing my experience as once a pupil advocate in my case. But I'm a bit gone on now in years in terms of my admission and where I've come to. So it doesn't make as much impact as somebody that's currently in it. So any kind of content you can create is always welcome, will always be welcomed by those that are going through similar difficulty. And of course, for me, the ultimate act of bravery is coming on camera and being willing to put a name and a face to your story, and just sharing and creating, like I said, creating this community. So welcome, Antonie.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Yeah, so I had to ramble on for a little bit until you joined.
I'm sorry, I tried to connect, but yeah, it's the first time I'm doing a live on Instagram, so it was a learning curve. At
Yeah.
least, figured it out.
Same. I had a live with a colleague yesterday, and we're like, gosh, we're both geriatric millennials trying to figure this Instagram thing out, but we're trying.
Naturally.
So, Antonie, I've done my introduction. The floor is yours. Um, Obviously, we've chatted, and there's a lot to your story. I'm sure we haven't even covered 1/10 of it, but I want you to do most of the talking, and then here and there I will chime in. So take it away.
Okay, yeah, I completely agree with you that each individual background will have its own uniqueness and in the way that one approaches articles and what you will experience out of articles. And I'm also sure that each firm we find ourselves in will have its unique dynamic and challenges that's associated with that. And I think that's kind of what I've seen throughout, my candidacy as well, and just speaking to friends and reaching out pertaining to the things as well. But ultimately, I feel like that's something we should do more, especially if you get out of varsity, get into law school, in the process of doing your articles and things like that. I think in the process we kind of lose one another, and we lose the sense of community and the support structures that we used to carry throughout varsity and things like that. And especially if you're a sole candidate in a firm, which often happens with your smaller to medium firms. And I think that's kind of where my story took, or my candidacy for that matter, took a turn for the worst.
Mm.
Especially feeling isolated, feeling like the profession may or may not be for me, feeling inept. And the common denominator being imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's occasioned by a lot of the like negative feedback you get, or in a rushed, high paced, high pressure environment that necessitates results. Because
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest, law firms are at the end of the day results driven profession, and you're part of the cog in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's sort of like a basis for the discussion today. I think we should reach out to one another and kind of support one another and share our successes and failures, shortcomings, help one another, and reach out when you're faced with a difficulty you don't know uh, how to navigate, for that
Mm-hmm.
matter. Because at the end of the day, we are sort of our own support structures in a way. Uh, the candidates being and our friends being with us. So, and especially when you're faced with those difficulties, and um, in a and in the environment that is, like we said, high paced, results driven, your principals more often than not don't have the time
Mm-hmm.
to set aside to like go through the process with you in a detailed manner, but rather give you a rough overview and expect of you to hit the ground running. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that type of process ultimately leads to mistakes, because that's at the end of the day how we learn and how we navigate and how we prove. But I feel like in for me personally, academics were always not a like bumpy road. There was success, constant
Mm-hmm.
success, and when there was setbacks, those setbacks weren't a constant things. It was momentary setbacks. So it's also something I feel like we aren't necessarily taught how to deal with, especially if you have been achieving at a pace. Like you have, but now you're in an environment where you don't get shown the ropes as much, which is
Mm-hmm.
bound to lead you to make mistakes. And now you kind of have to navigate how dealing with those mistakes, not only in like your own personal um, mindset or mind frame, but also receiving that criticism, often spoken in a way or out of frustration
Mm-hmm.
and deadline that has to be met, and like pressured environment. Because yeah, I think a lot of the times principals also get bad rep for the way that they treat candidates, but also keeping in mind now that we are in the profession as well, it's difficult to teach people whilst also being under pressure yourself, especially if there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work that needs to be done, and considering the time frames in which things need to be done in the profession on account of legislative deadlines and things like that. But yeah, apart from that, I think it's it's it it feels to me as if candidates aren't um, in a setting I found myself. I personally wasn't given much direction in
Mm-hmm.
respect of how to complete certain tasks, or what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that created a lot of inner conflict, and as well as a feeling of ineptitude, lacking the necessary skills or personality for the profession.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's something that can easily be avoided by some positive affirmation, or just like after hours, like teaching sessions, or things
Mm-hmm.
like that, which
Mm-hmm.
never really happened. But that just I think what I found, and some practical advice that I think warrants mentioning is that yeah, that's also something that I'm going to get to, but it's that we need to teach the people that we are going forward to teach now, and we need to equip them with the skills we wish we knew, not kind of
Mm-hmm.
fall into the same pattern of doing things. So even
Mm-hmm.
though you're under pressure, try and navigate the situation in such a way as to accommodate both parties rather than uh, being in a scenario that you previously found yourself in, for that matter. So what I found doing in situations where you have a lot of questions about matters is that it's something that I didn't necessarily do at the start, which could have helped. It's that you need to kind of assess the cases or whatever you're dealing with, um, point down those questions, respect the time of the principal as well, but gather all the information, all the questions you need, and then kind of set up an appointment with them. I need 10 minutes or 15 minutes of your time. I want to go through the files and then just run through them with the questions that you have, and then move on to dealing with those as instructed.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, from what I've heard from friends and stuff, and colleagues as well, is that tends to alleviate some of the things. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's not always um, conducive a conducive environment for slow, methodical learning. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then apart from that, I think we also spoke about um, like candidates being used for odd end jobs, and not
Mm-hmm.
ever like seeing any benefit for that matter. And I think a lot of the times we get stuck with grunt work, and don't really learn anything
Mm-hmm.
of use going forward. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand the fact that said work still needs to be done, but yeah, sometimes you are only left with that work, and you never really get the practical knowledge that you should, and you find yourself uh, being an attorney, admitted attorney later on, and you essentially haven't
Yeah.
really built the foundation to start your journey going forward on. So in that respect, I think it's 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 a it's something that we need to look into, maybe something need to consider, giving more work, expecting mistakes, taking the time to at least review the work that has been done. And but yeah, that's just my viewpoints, kind of looking back at it from a, a different point of view now. Maybe not as the candidate attorney himself, but now as someone that kind of also has to move forward into maybe seeing how to do things differently, considering that we what was experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Because I personally found myself in a very micromanaging work environment in the latter part of my candidacy, when
Mm-hmm.
I seeded articles and moved from firms, and that micromanaging environment kind of took a toll on my confidence in my working environment, confidence in my ability, confidence in what I do and what I thought I knew I could do. So
Mm-hmm.
in that regard, I found myself second guessing each and everything that I did, and that kind of compounded um, the stress even more, because with second guessing comes wasting of time, and especially
Yeah.
with yeah, in a time constrained environment, you
Mm,
where you have to constantly be working in order to meet deadlines.
mm,
You can't be second guessing. You have to be assured about what you're doing, and
mm,
know that you're going to have to fix these things going forward if and when mistakes kind of rear their head.
mm,
Especially, so yeah,
mm,
naturally the aim is not to make mistakes, but considering that we're human, it's inevitable,
mm,
you know, thing that will happen going forward.
mm,
But yeah, I think there's also a couple of things that we talked about that sat with me, like mentorship and things like finding someone that can kind of guide you doing to think about processes and see how you can manage these relationships better, someone you can lean on for emotional support
mm,
from time to time in more in a friend environment. But having a good support structure, I think, is important when you step into your articles, because it's not an easy journey.
mm,
It's in a journey where you are kind of dropped into a foreign environment, and where you are expected to perform, and where you will make mistakes, and where you will also be reprimanded for those mistakes on a fairly recent, frequent occasion. So just having a support structure, reaffirming that you aren't alone, you aren't the
mm,
only one going through this, kind of it takes away from that feeling of isolation. It takes away from that feeling of ineptitude, knowing that you aren't the only one that's having a tough time with adapting to the scenarios that you're facing, but rather
mm,
that it's a common occurrence,
mm,
and that you can learn from your colleagues, um, who are candidate attorneys, and they can learn from you, and vice versa. The
mm,
experience you've gained can you can draw on their experience, because at the end of the day, we all deal with different matters, and when you are faced with a matter that you haven't done before, and you don't know the procedural steps to follow, it's it's comforting to know that you can call someone and
mm,
talk it out and hash out the details, especially considering that your principal won't always be available, to kind of bounce ideas off and
mm,
see where you're going. So if you take the time to bounce the ideas off friends when they have a moment, and vice versa, and then you can present those ideas to the principal to see, uh, what they regard, well, they see as the best way forward based on their experiences, then we can kind of streamline the process. But yeah,
mm,
these are things that essentially I wish I knew, and I
mm,
applied from the beginning in my articles, because I only like found my way through this as I was doing things, and
mm,
at the end of the day, only developed my way of dealing with it. So yeah, basically not saying that it's a general, it's not like a template you can, well, like a six rules that you can follow, or a set way
mm,
of doing things, but rather a template that you can mold and make your own, to kind of find out how you go about things, what works best for you in your environment, and how you can navigate your way and find your own way through your articles, and how you want to deal with these different structures. And kind of also want to encourage candidates that it's okay to voice concerns, because
mm,
I feel like a lot of the times we're scared to voice ourselves, uh, especially in the working environment, to superiors and so forth.
mm,
But um, falling on like not speaking rather about, or voicing concerns when you get to a matter and things like that, often also is a mistake. Because
Mm.
if you note something that may have been overseen by somebody else, it's better
Mm.
to raise that and know that that situation is addressed than not raise it out of fear of sounding stupid or not knowing what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, either you learn something or you identified something that is a potential issue and can be rectified. But
Mm.
yeah, it's something that I also had to build up to. So in my articles, finding the courage to speak up, finding the courage to say, listen, I don't agree with this, and then talking it out and
Mm.
expressing yourself when you're posed with situations where you don't necessarily feel comfortable with doing something,
Mm.
indicating that uh, listen, I don't know what I'm doing here, or I don't feel comfortable doing this. I need you to explain to me the reason why. And so things like that. Just don't let people bulldoze you into doing things and then kind of reprimand you if you don't get it right. Like I think that's kind of something that happened to me is that I would say that I would be able to do something out of fear of
Mm.
sounding or being inadequate or not being pulling my own weight, and then I would often take on more than I could get done, and that in itself would
Mm.
lead to problems. So, kind of knowing, finding finding your capacity, and then also making known that you're at capacity, or you are available for more work also, because
Mm.
at the end of the day we're there to learn as well. And a lot of the times I found myself in the quieter seasons, um, sitting there and doing grunt work, like I said, making copies, sending out emails, not really getting to deal with actual processes, drafting of summons, particulars of claim, what needs to be included in the particulars, what doesn't need to be included in the particulars. It's all that's practical knowledge that I feel like I could have gained if I had the boldness and to step out and say that, listen, I'm ready, I'm available to do drafting, I'm available to do this. And out of fear of making mistakes, I feel like we sometimes limit our own growth in firms as well. But it's yeah, it's a lot of the times between me and my friends, we've discussed the situations, and a lot of the it comes to the consensus of fear of not being well, fear of failure, fear of like speaking up and being reprimanded for that, fear of losing articles potentially, like losing your job,
Mm.
and because it's so hard to find articles. And honestly, I think a lot of things that we've discussed as well is there's alternatives. I've know a lot of people struggle finding articles. I myself had to face a lot of interviews and a lot of rejections and a lot of self doubt
Mm.
when it comes to whether I will be able to secure articles, whether it's something I'm doing, whether it's my personality, whether I'm not good enough,
Mm.
and those are all things that kind of place extra pressure on you after your studies or during your studies, going into candidacy as well. So all in all, um, just like wrapping it into a ribbon, it's a difficult process that I feel can is made more difficult as a result
Mm.
of of a lack of time to take to teach candidates, irritation and frustration in general, and also a lack of communication at times. Because uh,
Mm.
I feel like a lot of times when principals used to tell me or brief me on a matter, they would brief me as if I were in their shoes, like with their experience, their knowledge,
Mm.
and I would sometimes feel lost because terminology or processes that they would refer to would fly
Mm.
over my head. I would kind of have to tell them, well, let's just slow down. What's this and what's that and what's this?
Mm.
And there's not always time to explain what these processes are, why these processes are followed. So you're kind of also not in a situation where you can um, learn something in the moment. You kind of have to follow suit of instructions and then take time later on to educate yourself on the why or the
Mm.
nuances of that particular process so that you can
Mm.
go forward into doing that. But yeah, topic for another day. I think. Um,
Yeah.
because yeah, I think we can think about uh, like ways or shortcomings of the whole candidacy experience. I,
Mm.
I think we can sit here for forever and just nitpick things, but at the end of the day, it's a give and take situation, and I feel like a lot of the times we get placed in situations where we get exploited, but also there are situations that also can't be helped from the principal's end, and especially the situations they find themselves in.
Mm.
Because I know also candidates that have wonderful working
Mm.
environments and also learn a lot about the processes and have fun working with the people. However, they don't,
Mm.
unfortunately, don't learn much during their time, and then get faced with the harsh reality of practice afterwards, and then you have to
Mm.
go through all of this. So, yeah, I think in as much as articles is something that is not easily ascertainable, it's also not a favor, but
Mm.
rather a requirement
Mm.
into the process. It's not like um, the firm is necessarily doing us a favor
Mm.
by employing you as a candidate. You
Mm.
you are being employed as an employee to do a service,
Mm.
and you've agreed to terms of that service. And at the end of the day, you're expected to perform in accordance with the agreement. However, you're also not there to be exploited as if you weren't an employee, but rather someone that is been done a favor to. I mean,
Mm.
um, if it were something that was discretionary or optional to move into the profession, then I would say that okay, then it might be a favor. But unfortunately, this is a requirement, and at the end of the
Mm.
day, the law firm will draw benefit from you in some way or another because they are running a business. But that
Mm.
doesn't mean that they get the right to exploit you
Mm.
and use you to do things that goes beyond your normal duties. I would say. I feel like a lot of there are things that can be expected, um, which are reasonable, but I also feel like some things that I've heard, like um, running personal errands for the journeys themselves and things like that,
Mm.
that I feel is to some degree exploitive,
Mm.
considering that you are there to learn not about how to run the errands, but rather you are there to learn how to get into the profession, how to do what you need to be doing going forward. And
Mm.
I think a lot of the times we let that slide in fear of offending or jeopardizing our own security in the candidacy. And
Mm.
I think we don't voice enough the fact that we as candidates or the candidates are going through these things. Um, and the fact that it's not being voiced is part of the issue. Because
Mm.
if people aren't speaking up, then nobody's going to care and nothing's going to change.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, this is why we are here. It's just to, one, kind of tell people that you are not alone in your
Mm.
struggles. It's a tough process out there. Give some guidelines in more or less how to approach subject matters, and then also just like bring to the attention of the general public and other candidate attorneys and legal professionals that things aren't always as they should be, and that
Mm.
um, yeah, so things because they aren't as they should be, we kind of get led into a situation where you end up being, well, not gaining the necessary skills or the necessary
Mm.
tools in order to further yourself as a
Mm.
legal profession, and
Mm.
for that reason fail in this whole process that was set up to achieve a certain goal, and
Mm.
that's to equip you going forward. So yeah, that's just a couple of my viewpoints surrounding this whole the candidacy and ways to go. Yeah, yeah, and a couple of nuances into that.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Um, yeah, articles is a many-headed monster, right? We could be here for hours talking about, and of course, for me, I'm very sensitive to the training aspect of it. So I even find myself, you know, proverbially, figuratively knocking on law firms' doors saying, if you guys want help structuring your articles, for your incoming candidates, give me a call and let's structure some kind of a program, because obviously the LPC does not give that, and it's left to the discretion of the firms. Hence, we have
Yeah,
that huge gap between what you're there for and what you actually come out with. So yeah, but I think what I like about what you shared is the fact that, and I said this in my introduction, is that we don't want to demonize principals. We don't want to demonize firms. We understand
yes,
from their perspective that the system is what it is. This is, like you said, not a favor, it's a requirement of qualification. So we understand from their perspective, we're getting this novice coming from university being kind of foisted upon them. And
yes,
they have a business to run. They have a business to run, and they have no time to teach you. They didn't start a law firm to become teachers. You just thrust into that context and you expect it to go with the flow. And they are frustrated. Clients are putting pressure on them. There are other staff that might be problematic. So you coming with the question, you don't know when you're going to catch them, what frame of mind they're going to be in. They're going to snap at you, and you have to suck it up, or you have to go and scream outside or do whatever you have to do. But it's that unfortunate situation of, maybe they should rather be, instead of putting you guys into a business setup where the law practice, to sort of maybe add other types of legal enterprises where you can go into articles, ones that are less pressurized in terms of clientele and going to court and people coming through the door and messengers and sheriffs, and so where you can still get the experience, but without the pressure on the owner or the principal to have to run the business and teach you. And the
yeah,
thing is, it is extremely pressurized. I mean, I remember my experience, not as a candidate attorney, although I could be deemed to have done my articles, because when I went from advocacy to a law firm, I had to learn everything that attorneys do, which was completely foreign territory. So, in that way, I empathize with CAs that they have to learn these things from scratch, because I had to learn about the sheriff and commissioning affidavits. And I mean, a lot of assumptions were made about me based on, oh, you're an advocate, don't you know how to commission an affidavit? Or you're an advocate, don't you know about the sheriff and what to do at the sheriff? And I'm like, no, I give that to the attorney to do. So I had to learn all that from scratch. I had to get bullied and um, given flack by people that didn't even have any qualifications to their name. So I do understand to an extent what it's like. But also, the one of the law firms that I was at, they were the director took on the maximum number, and they were all females, about 20 something, early 20s, coming in wet behind the ears. Some of them hadn't even graduated. One had a master's, and I basically taught them everything because the director was never there. He was that kind of a director, kind of run the business on WhatsApp, run the business via WhatsApp. So I had to, everything was like, ask Lisa, ask Lisa. And Lisa also has her own files to deal with. So I do understand that pressure of, okay, you got a law firm to run. In my case, I was like the unofficial office manager. So I had the whole entire office to see to and my own work. And I had to look after the three wet behind the ears, little they're like little baby Yodas, coming with their, their little coats and, trying to look the part and, and then this guy was never around to teach them.
Mm.
And even when he was there, he would still be asked Lisa. And it's like, I got sick. Like I got sick. I'm not an asthmatic, but my chest flared up and I started getting palpitations and I was forced to take time off because I had to end up doing blood tests and all of that. So
Yeah.
it was hectic. It was hectic. I mean, I was basically running the day-to-day operations. And I've got 3 CAs who are asking me for templates. They're asking me for what do I say when I go to court tomorrow. They're asking me everything under the sun. And I still have my own work. I still got my own file schedule. I got to manage any crises happening in reception. So that pressure or the pressure of having to manage the business, even though I wasn't the owner, but I was, for all intents and purposes, managing the business. And then to have these ones now, and they were all female. So females drama, and they were playful, and I had to like figure out, okay, how do I balance their sort of immaturity with teaching them? It's hectic, right? And they all like they're in their early 20s, so it's like, okay, don't be a dragon, like just let them do their thing and then teach them. And of course they were doing PLT. So they were exhausted coming in the next day because they would do PLT in the evening. And then you have to manage that tiredness. They still have to go to court. They have any crisis at court, they're phoning the office. Lisa, what must I do? What must I tell the client? The client made a payment. What must I do with the money? I mean, that happens. And if you're looking at a director, the actual owner of the firm having to deal with that, I mean, the capacity is just, you don't have the capacity. So I think, to be fair, we'll just shout out or we'll just give credence to what principals face when these young ones coming to their firm knowing absolutely nothing. And you still have to make your targets. You've got to see to clients. You've got to onboard new clients. It's a dynamic thing having a law firm. There's so much going on at any given point. And then now you have this little person in your ear, what must I do? What must I do? Like, ugh. So it's like, yeah, okay. To be fair, we will take that into consideration. But at the same time, I think principals and law firms firstly need to be screened for suitability. And secondly, they have to have some kind of a structure in place. And that's why the exploitation is so takes place so easily, because it's just, oh, this person is coming in, we don't know where they fit exactly. So you become kind of like loose change in the car. It's like, oh, we'll use it for this, or we'll use it for that, or we'll use it for the car guard. It's just handy. It's just lying there. We'll leave it there. We'll need it for something. So even CAs are not even like properly orientated as to what is my place in the firm. And then on top of that, there's no structure as to, okay, we're going to show you the ropes, the civil procedure stuff. Then the following week, we're going to show you criminal. Then the following week, you're going to do drafting. There's nothing of that. And so you kind of like, okay, I'll just sit here just take whatever comes my way. And then, of course, if you want to ask questions, there's a fear because you think, okay, they're giving it to me, they're expecting me to know what to do. And I often tell CAs, look, you're just an LLB graduate. You don't know anything. Okay, so don't gaslight yourself and say, okay, I'm supposed to know. You don't know it. So like you said, you have to get the courage up and ask the question. Because ultimately, if you have the perspective of this is going out to an actual client, I'm not at university, this is not a scenario in an exam question. It's an actual client. If I screw this up, not only am I going to get crapped on by the principal, the client will be unhappy. And what if the firm loses the client? The stakes are very high. And in the absence of instructions or even clear instructions, it's in your own best interest as a CA to, and I say, guys, you take charge of this experience. Nobody is telling, LPC is not telling the firm how to handle you guys. They don't have a structure. There's no curriculum. You have to learn how to manage yourself, manage the risk that you pose to the firm because candidate attorneys pose infinite risk of having to handle real files and not knowing anything. You got to learn how to manage your communication. You got to learn how to manage your documentation. You got to learn to communicate. You got to learn to ask questions and get it on record that you've asked these questions, you've asked for clarification, so that if you are shouted at later, you can always point to some kind of a paper trail to say, you know, I asked the questions 2 weeks ago and I just had to do what I had to do. You know, so it's unfortunately you have to take charge of the experience. Nobody, and if the instructions aren't clear enough, then you sort of, in a sense, you demand for that clarity. You say, you know, can you break it down a bit more? Can you show me an example? Or can you give me an example? I'll figure it out, you know? So there's that. And then also the thing about getting what I call getting your squad. I mean, we all have them at university, but then we scatter and then, you know, all of us are applying out. And of course, you touched on the rejection side of applications. And that's the kind of question I get regularly, where they'll say, you know what, Lisa, my friends are getting articles, I'm not getting articles. Is something wrong with me? You know, then I'm like, oh boy, like now we've got an existential crisis on our hands. So whenever it's that stage of, okay, you're applying for articles, I say that's usually the time when you come face to face with yourself. But if you didn't feel insecure up until that point, any insecurities you have will be brought to the surface. And you'll start asking questions like that. Is there something wrong with me? You know? And of course, the short answer is no, because you're a different person, you're vastly made to different people, your experience is going to be different, right? So you can't expect your journey to unfold in the same way that theirs is going to unfold. So again, you don't gaslight yourself and think, oh, something is wrong with me. Therefore, that's why I'm not getting articles. You might just go down a different path than they will. But I think it's that whole, there's so much of pressure to get in that I think once we get in, it's like we don't know what to do. And because there's no guidance and you're like, okay, like you said, navigation. You have to have you got to get a squad around you, whether it's reaching out to varsity mates, other CAs in the area. I'm a big fan of that. If you're in an area where there are lots of firms, create a support club. I know Megan's group, theirs is a union. They have you guys have a labor union or something, or candidate attorneys union. I said, I'm not going to interfere with you guys because you guys are very well formed. I'm too afraid. Right. So, I mean, that's a nice example. Like the firm upstairs, the firm downstairs, if you're in the same building, right? Then that is your squad, because we should never underestimate, and I heard this on a podcast last night, the power of social connections getting through a hard time. Like even if it's not a study group, we're not saying get together as a study group or it's only work related. You might just need a squad to go out for a drink afterwards, after work, or go and play some squash or whatever it is that you do to unwind. But having that band of brothers, so to speak, is like it's one of the ways in which you take charge of the experience. And I think you guys having that group is so priceless. And also taking charge of the learning. Like if your principal is not setting any objectives, if the farm doesn't have a structured program, then you say, okay, this month or first 3 months of my articles, I'm just gonna learn the ropes. I'm just gonna give myself some grace, some space. I'm gonna learn the ropes. Year four, I mean, month 4 to maybe month 5, or month 4 to month 6, I want to learn civil. Month 6 to month 7, I want to learn criminal or whatever other practice areas the firm has. So in that sense as well, maybe it's not something you are articulating, but you have this quiet courage to say, okay, no one's telling me what to do. I seem to be some kind of a dispensable, loose change kind of person in this firm. So let me create my own structure. Let me create my own plan for how I'm going to go through articles and what I want to leave articles with. Because you
Yeah,
can't be.
I think a lot
Mhm.
of time, just sorry to interject there, but a lot of the times we think that articles is something that's out of our control, and
Yeah.
we neglect taking charge, like you said, of our own articles and of our, because to some degree we do have an influence of where our or how our articles are going to go. At
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, we need to take charge of what we want out of this as well. Just
Mm-hmm.
consolidate that, listen, okay, I need X amount, or I need to get these skills. I need to know drafting. I need to know how to liaise with clients. I need to know how court processes work. Okay. Three
Mm-hmm.
basic things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go into more depth in each one of them. What do I want to experience? What do I need to know in order to for drafting? Okay, is there any books I can consult? Is there any um, anybody at the firm I can go to on a regular basis that seems eager or open to speak to me to speak in respect of how drafting is supposed to be done? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I used to take templates as an example, and then I would work through those templates, go read up on what sections they refer to in said
Mm-hmm.
templates, because there are some matters you will come across more often than others, and kind of just educate myself on how the templates will look, why certain things in the templates are being said, and AMLAs. I'm a big advocate for AMLAs, especially when drafting pleadings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that was given to me by one of the principals, who said that when you do drafting, make sure that you consult AMLAs,
Yes.
and if you don't understand something in AMLAs, you then go do more research about it, or you consult somebody about it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also something that, so as to avoid constantly relying on the principles, kind of take charge of your own of what you need for
Mm-hmm.
this. Yes, it's a time consuming process, and sometimes you're going to have to work a little bit longer hours because you have to take set time out to educate yourself. Or
Mm-hmm.
alternatively, if you can't get something done, do something that you have already known, that you know how to do, and then after hours, just see if you can't do some light reading up about things you can do in the next day. Clients also, it's we've discussed a scenario where I found myself in a position where the client gave instruction, retracted said instruction, and then reverted to the principal, well, director actually, indicating that I acted against the instruction because it was a
Mm-hmm.
client that knew the director. And in that respect, it could have gone badly if I had not kept the paper trail. And in that respect, I also just always advise candidates that if you make a phone call, whatsoever nature, ensure that you advise client that you will send an email indicating what
Mm-hmm.
has been discussed over the phone, and just ask them to acknowledge same in that email. So just
Mm-hmm.
as you keep a paper trail indicating, fortunately, my conversations with the client was done over WhatsApp. So I
Mm.
had paper trail and evidentiary material to kind of show that I was not the one at fault.
Mm.
But there will be scenarios that you don't have those evidence because you were communicating over a call.
Mm.
In that regard, I was say revert back. That's another thing with difficult clients and things like that. I don't think there is a set way to deal with them, but rather you find a way as you go, and you kind of have each one has their own way of dealing
Mm.
with difficult conflicts. But that's also something that I feel when you're in your support structure, in your support group, and you're talking to friends, you know, you can bounce ideas off one another on how to approach certain personalities. And
Mm.
although you might not approach the situation in the same way they do, you can learn something from their experiences as well. So
Yeah.
just talking about what has transpired, or what how these clients react to certain actions, you can more or less um, gain some practical knowledge on or experience.
Mm.
And then I also feel like um, getting the necessary tools. That's what we're discussing now. Is so you need to see what tools you need to get. What do you
Mm.
need? So formulate in your head and sit down and see what you need in order to be a good attorney. What do you need to move forward? What do you need in your mind?
Mm.
If an objective isn't given to you, you have to formulate your own. And then
Yeah.
based on that formulation, you can break it down into smaller pieces and see what you want to get out of your candidacy.
Mm.
Where do you want to go? And then also see in the question in the comment section there was a question. I think Annie asked the question. She said that how do you not get exploited without um, whilst also not seeming not eager to help? I think in that respect, it's not you can be eager to help,
Mm.
but you also have to make known that there will be boundaries. And
I
I
see.
think that a lot of the times we don't affirm those boundaries, and that's why those boundaries get pushed a lot. So,
Mm.
and that's where the exploitation part comes in. Like, will you quickly go pick up the kids? Will you do this? Will you do that? Phoning after hours,
Mm.
wanting to discuss
Mm.
matters, and then you avail yourself without making it known that there is a boundary.
Mm.
And if you don't set boundaries, unfortunately, those boundaries will most likely in those types. If someone is inclined to exploitative behavior,
Mm.
then that will be. But also, I think try not to make although being on friendly terms with your superior and things like that, it's healthy to be on friendly terms, but
Mm.
also keep it professional. As soon as
Yeah.
that relationship gets more friendship based, inevitably the lines between what is considered um, fair and not fair in your working relations with one another will become blurred. And when
Mm.
that blur occurs, it's more easy for exploitation to, at the end of the day, creep in.
Mm.
So I just
Mm.
feel like it's an important aspect to consider. Make sure that you have boundaries. Yeah, but yeah, again, those boundaries will differ from individual to individual. It will depend on what you consider fair and what you don't consider fair. Because if
Mm.
it's in your mind it's fair, then it won't necessarily impact how you will do your candidacy. And then in that sense, you can show your eagerness to contribute to the firm. But the moment it crosses
Mm.
your boundaries, then you also
Yeah.
have to make known that it crosses your boundaries, because then you are no longer being showing an eagerness, but rather being taken advantage out of. Because now it's going
Mm.
against what you bring to the table in order to show that you want to contribute to the firm in a way that is beyond your scope and duties. And I feel that if you want to contribute what is beyond what is expected of you, you are more than welcome to do so. But that should be something that you decide of your own accord and not something that gets forced onto you, or kind of where you get put in a situation where it's expected of you, or you get manipulated into doing it out of fear of doing something. Because, like we said, this is it's not a favor to award articles, and you don't get to invade my personal life by virtue of granting me an opportunity. This is still um, a business relationship wherein I provide my time, and you give me a platform where to, one, learn from, and two, remunerate me to a certain extent as we agreed upon. So yeah, I just think that I hope that answers Annie's question, but just navigating what is considered being eager or showing willingness, and how you avoid being taken advantage of in those settings.
Now, I was gonna answer the first part of Annie's question with the same boundaries. So I think even that will be the stuff that you gather in preparation. So you're talking about your tools, your squad, gathering a support or building a support structure. And then you're gonna
Yes,
get the material that you need, right? So maybe you sniff around and see what other CAs what do they use in their day to day. Okay, then go look for copies of AMLers, try and get some templates beforehand. Okay, then another tool will be, and I consider this a tool, is setting your objectives. So setting
definitely. Yeah.
time frames, what you plan to learn in each time frame, and like you said, breaking it down. Okay, what do I need to know for drafting? What tools do I need for drafting? Getting more specific. What do I need to know for court appearances? What do I need to wear? All of those things. And then, of course, another tool would be setting boundaries. So you're going in with, I'd say, like a tool belt or like an arsenal, maybe, where you're like, okay, I'm coming in with the physical stuff that I need. I'm coming in with a certain mentality. I'm coming in with my own objectives. I'm coming in with my own boundaries. And I think boundaries can be personal, professional, and I think what I've noticed amongst, I can't generalize, but I'll say some CAs, is that they don't know how they ought to be treated. So that when that line is crossed, they don't know. Hence the exploitation. So if you know as a person now how you want to be treated in a professional setting, in a professional context, in any context, in a church, in a friend group, if you don't have maybe at least an unarticulated, most of the time it's unarticulated, but when somebody crosses that line, you put up a flag and you say, I don't care who you are. You'll be thinking this, I don't care who you are, but I won't be treated like that. And I've seen, sadly, minority of CAs be able to take the risk and say, principal, a partner, associate, enough is enough. So I think when we're going in as well and we are setting boundaries, we have to know how we want to be treated. We have to know what the scope of our job is. So yes, I can do errands that are work related, or maybe the odd personal errand, but can I please finish the task that you gave me to do? Or if not, can I have an extension? If the other errand is urgent, can I have an extension? So you have to be quietly asserting, I can do it, but these are my terms. As opposed to, yes, I'll do because I want to keep my place in the firm. Remember, articles will always be there. The system will not change. If you lose your job for saying no, you can always come back. And yes, it's hard to get articles, but again, you got to know what you want out of the experience and, of course, how you want to be treated. And if those certain minimum standards are violated, if you're not learning anything, if you're not learning anything and you are being constantly put down, maligned, gossiped, gaslit for no apparent reason, you got to get out of there. Okay? And the thing will always be there. Articles will always be there. So you can always reapply. You can just abandon it. You can cede it. But if you have those boundaries set up, you want to learn some things. You want to learn within certain boundaries. You want to use the tools that you have gathered. You want to use the support structure you've gathered. And if it's still not working out, and if you are asserting yourself, your boundaries, you are keeping up with your objectives, and there's just no reciprocation from the other side, or they don't even give two hoots about how you're conducting yourself, then I often tell people, you know what you have to do. You don't have to ask me. I think you know what you have to do, and of course, in the immediate aftermath, they'll say, you know what, I feel so free. I'll say, yeah, because somebody crossed your line, somebody crossed the boundary, and it doesn't matter who it is, what firm it is, um, whether it's somebody that's related to the Chief Justice, you have standards. And yes, the LPC doesn't have any other avenue, but you can always come back to it later. It's just not happening in this firm, So very much you have to, I think when you're applying and you're getting rejected and you've got all this time on your hands, that's the time to sit and set everything up, set yourself up, mental tools, physical tools, get your people in place,
Yeah.
get your 911 line set up. You know what I'm saying? Get your people on speed dial, set all that up. Because you want to go in there, you're understanding it's not in your favor, like the Hunger Games, okay? The odds are, the odds are never in your favor, okay?
Yeah.
Everything is stacked up against you. How are you going to make this work? And that's where you test you yourself, you're tested, your resilience and all those things, your adversity quotient, all those things that we all need skills in now because life is getting hard. So it's a hard experience, but if you have a plan, if you've got tools, if you've got people on call, if you've got boundaries, you've got objectives, you give it your best shot. But if you're going without that, then of course it's going to be, hell on the high seas for you.
Difficult run at it. No, yeah. But yeah, I thank you very much, Lisa, for the opportunity just to have a chat with you today. It was, I think, a good experience, and I'm hoping that people can um, at least take something out of it, even if it's just to know that it's it's not. It doesn't mean that if you're experiencing difficulties in your articles that you won't make it in the profession. It's also not a situation that you are a failure for in any respect if you feel like you can't proceed with articles for or that this profession isn't for you. You realize it throughout the articles or whatever. It's also not the last kind of avenue. I think we also discussed that in the last session previously. It's just that there's always another way of doing things. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy to explore those alternative avenues, but if you feel like this road isn't the one that you're supposed to take, there's always an alternative to what you're pursuing. Just because you have an LLB degree doesn't mean necessarily that you have to be a lawyer or you have to be an advocate for that. But yeah, there are alternatives, and I feel like people should just know that you're not confined to this. This is not your lot, and you are able to take charge of the situation you find yourself in. And yeah, kind of just take it. And it takes courage, a lot of courage, to say that, listen, maybe this is not for me. Maybe I need to do something else, and then just explore that, at risk of, or yeah, at risk of, like your mental state. It's not worth sacrificing everything to pursue a career that just might not be for you.
Yeah. Perfect place to land the plane, Antonie. If it's
Thank
not,
you very much.
if you no career is worth sacrificing your well-being. And I
Definitely.
think one of the objectives of this and my podcast is, if people need that extra push to quit, and the podcast episode or this series does it for them, then of course we've also done them a service by giving them that nudge. So quitting is fine. You're not a weakling, you're not a failure, you're not any less of a legal professional if you decide to quit your articles or even change your mode of practicing from courtroom to in-house. There's no such thing as a lawyer stereotype. And of course, if your well-being is on the line, then you know what you need to do. And maybe this episode or this live was the extra nudge that you needed to put yourself first. Okay, so, but for those that are staying the course, it's doable. It's hard, it's doable, it's going to test you. And even if you didn't start off with all the tools that we spoke about, there's no reason why you can't course correct and you can't get all those people on board, and the other tools that we spoke about, setting boundaries, having learning objectives, and all of those things. So, okay, onward and forward. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Antonie, another brave soul, for sharing your experience. And it's certainly been a pleasure getting to know you, and I don't think it's going to be the last time we interact. Maybe not on the live, but at least in private. So thank you so much, and yeah,
Thank you very
thank you
much.
everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next week. Next week we have another guest at 3 o'clock in the next installment of Candidate Attorney Diaries. Thank you so much.